So I first got involved at the end of my freshman year. That was when I first interviewed for a position. So I wound up being appointed to vice commissioner for university life. And so my sophomore year, that was the first year I was actually involved. And a lot of that was just trying to figure out what Student Senate does. I went to every single meeting, not knowing that vice commissioners did not need to go to every single meeting. And then I think a few times at the beginning of the year I tried to vote too because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to vote. But eventually I learned what the rules and procedures were and actually read that document and got a way better understanding of what Student Senate was, and then could come up with some projects. So I think one of the projects that I worked on my first year was what was it? Reduce, reuse, fest cycle. And so what we did was during fest season, we handed out recycling bags for all the houses that were on the fest streets, so we would encourage people to actually recycle instead of throwing out all the cans or whatever else they were going to have. And so it was a small initiative, but at least that was the first time that I was like, hey, okay, I see what Student Senate can kind of do. So then the next year, that year I ran with Hannah, Courtney, and Steve's campaign on the Unite ticket and ran for a senator at large position. So then my junior year I served in that, which senator at large you get to do a billion different projects. So that was really cool, being able to hop around and do whatever I felt students really wanted. So that's when I started working on some campus lighting things, and then together Landon and I started doing things for regional campus representation, which was really important. After the concealed carry vote, we saw that regional campuses voted differently than we did. And then, so it was October then of that year that Zach, Landon, and I decided, okay, we're going to run for the executive positions. And so from there, it was just all crazy. I think my mind just completely blacks out the entire March through April months of doing the campaign and then getting into office and figuring out everything that we wanted to do. And so, this past year I've been serving as vice president, which has been incredible. It's such a great opportunity and position. I would highly recommend it. It is way harder than I thought at times, but it's good. So I guess that's the long story. We decided to run as a ticket. It was at first Zach and I that talked about it a lot. We thought Landon was going to run with other people, so we weren't really sure. But when Zach and I talked about what positions we wanted, Zach had said he would be comfortable being treasurer or vice president. And I said I would be comfortable being president or vice president. And so we just kind of needed to see who else we were going to get as our third person and see what they would work best in. And so we started thinking about it more and more and decided that Landon would be our best option. And so we chose Landon to be president, or Landon chose, I don't know, it was a mutual thing, to have Landon run as president because he knew a lot of the administrators. He had these great connections from being chief of staff, and he's just outgoing in general and will bother any administrator on this campus. So we decided he'd be great for more of the external work, whereas I had experience leading organizations internally, and I wanted to be more of project focused, not so much sitting in meetings with administrators, but actually working on some of the projects and working with commissioners. So that's how I got into the vice president position, and then Zach in treasurer. And so from there, we wanted to kind of get our group together before we came up with all of our platform points. So the three of us, plus our campaign team, so we had Sarah, Haley, and John. We were all coming up with great ideas that we wanted to campaign on, but we really wanted everyone to feel involved because we had been part of campaigns where you're just kind of told what to say or what to advocate for or how to talk to students about different ideas. So we wanted everyone in the campaign to be really involved in their own special part of it. So once we came up with our great team, then we came up with the platform. And so everyone was able to then point to a platform point and say, that was my idea. And then they were able to better tell students about it. So that was all really exciting, but it took a lot of time. And we, of course, had a billion ideas and then kind of cutting that down. So there's a few, not a billion, but we still have a lot of ideas that we can advocate for and push for. But if we had too many, it was going to be I think throughout this year, I've seen commissions work a lot more closely together. I think in the past they've been totally separate. I obviously wasn't in commissioner meetings in past years, but now that we have commissioner meetings every week, it's great because we can work on giant campus-wide projects all together. So instead of just U Life working on lighting, now we have U Life, off campus, residence life, women's affairs, all these people jumping in to work on one project, and so we have more voices speaking out, more bodies moving, more people to talk to students, and so I think that that's been a huge improvement that we've seen, and I know, or I think the next executives will kind of carry on with that, having this collective action sort of take on it. I think that collaboration is definitely part of the executive's impact, but also I think just the way that people act in Senate is very different this year than in past years. I think sometimes in past years there would be a negative, hostile environment. And of course, we're going to have arguments in Senate. We're debating things. But I think now a lot of people feel comfortable speaking different opinions. And so that's something that I think we really strive to do. We didn't just want everyone to have the same mindset or have the same political beliefs or anything like that. And so we really tried to get a diverse group. And so there will be senators that will stand up and say something that I don't personally agree with, but at the same time, I'm glad that they do that, and I'm glad that we've created this environment where they feel comfortable enough to like stand up and say something. And so I think that I hope that that continues in the future, and I hope that that's something that sticks around. So, vice president is supposed to appoint new members to the Senate. So, that's why I'm a sponsor on all of those fun resolutions. So, in the beginning of the year, I was doing a lot of I would get the applications and resumes and everything, reach out to them, set up the interview, then after I interview all the candidates, pick the candidate, and then move on. But it was sometimes just really complicated because I would try to have the commissioner in on the interview because they're going to know more, they're going to work with that person more on a daily basis than I will. And so it was sometimes frustrating trying to figure out everyone's schedules, trying to get students to communicate. And so I kind of changed the role a little bit where I created our director of outreach or director of recruitment, sorry. And so her job now is to kind of go through the resumes and everything, vet the people, send them on to the commissioners. The commissioners can then interview and then let me know who they want to appoint, and then I work to like create that resolution with them. But then also we've been expanding that recruitment idea to have our director of recruitment reach out to different student organizations that could fill these positions and say, hey, this is a great way for your members to get involved with student government. And so I think that that is something new that I hope that they work on more next year. We're just getting it started, but I think it's better if we reach out to different organizations and say, hey, we see potential leaders in you. How about you send us along like some people that you think would be great for this position? I think that that's the best way to do recruitment in the future. Can't remember right now. I know we appointed another one last night, so I'd have to double check how many we're at right now. But it's just there's always going to be vacancies. It's just students I think sign up at the beginning of the year or somewhere in the year, and they're like, "Yes, I'm so excited," and then they realize like it is a big time commitment. It is a lot of work, and so sometimes it's so frustrating. We'll look on the roster and be like, oh my gosh, why do we need another person for off-campus life? We always need somebody for off-campus. And so it can be frustrating, but you have to understand, like, we are working with students that sometimes can't end up fulfilling their commitment to Senate, or things happen and they have to step down. So you have to be kind of flexible. So you can't, like, get too bogged down with like, oh, how many people do we have still to fill, or how many people do we have left? Now, if it was a huge thing, like if we had a ton of people to still fill positions, then we would need to be worried about, okay, what are we doing or what are we not doing to like present ourselves to the student body. First, when you come into the role, you have a lot of these big picture ideas. And so the struggle is then when you have all these hopes and goals and stuff, and then you start talking to administrators, and the first meeting you have, they're like, you actually can't do that. And so you have to then go around and try to find a different route. And it's hard. So one of the ideas that I had at the beginning of the year, I wanted to be able to give students class credit for like full-time jobs that they work over the summer, because not a lot of students can have like a billion internships, and they can't, some students just can't afford that. They can't afford to have all these unpaid internships. And so I had argued that we have a lot of students that are working full-time jobs during the summer. They're gaining these great skills. And so say you're working at a manager at a store or something over the summer. Well, why would you then have to come to school and take a management course or something like that? And so I had tried to talk to administrators about, okay, so can we get this to count for a class credit? And it's frustrating because they're like, well, you'd have to go through each school, or no, you can't do that. They'll give you a billion different excuses. And so then I had tried to then contact all these other universities in Ohio to say, hey, do you do anything like this? And some of them did something kind of, but not really. And that I think is really frustrating when you're trying to create something new and nobody's ready to like take on something new yet, or the systems just aren't in place that can be flexible enough for that. Student Senate does have a lot of power on our campus, but sometimes it's not always the amount of power that we need to put through these big ideas. So, and then I think we've also had other projects where there's some administrative pushback where I think they try to take more control away from us. And so we've had a couple projects or things that we've had to do that it's supposed to be mostly a student senate responsibility, or just students are supposed to work on it. And then the administration, of course, they want us to succeed and they want to be helpful, but it kind of turns out to be overstepping in a way. And so it's hard to have those conversations where you have to push back and say, no, this is our role and you need to like understand, and we need to have like an agreement of who's going to do what. And then sometimes also sucking up your pride and letting the administrators take over something. I've learned, I had to do that one time, and that like, it's really hard and really frustrating, but they do want you to succeed, and so I get why they do it. So I guess I'll just start with the first one that I had. So with being University Life Vice Commissioner, I really just did not know what was going on for the beginning of my term and everything. And so I had wanted there to just be more a better transition, better knowledge of what vice commissioners do. And I think that that'll come back to next year training commissioners more. I don't think that we even did that great of a job this year. We've had a lot of vice commissioners that still are like, I don't really understand my position, and it's hard. And so some vice commissioners are trained really well, and then others not so much. And so I'm hoping that we can change that in the future. And then along with that, Senator at Large was on University Life too. And so originally when I came into vice presidency, I just wanted to get rid of University Life in general. I felt like I was on that commission for 2 years, and they would do things, but at the same time, when you have the ability to do everything on campus, it's really hard to hold people accountable to do just one thing, if that makes sense. And so I was all about, let's figure out something else different. We shouldn't do University Life the way that we are. And so we had conversations about maybe making the Senator at Large is more focused. But again, I think it just comes to like getting people in those positions that are very dedicated and ready to be ambitious and try things, and giving them ideas. I think on that commission, if you have never heard of what Student Senate does in the University Life Commission, there's no way that commission is going to be successful. And so we need to do a better job of like letting them know of the opportunities that they have, the things that we've done in the past, and how they can build on those. And then for transitioning my position, I will have a giant transition document, because sometimes I feel like I didn't have a lot of guidance going into it. And so it was a lot of figuring out as I go and looking at whatever documents that we did have to figure out things. So I really want to make sure that we set up a transition meeting with the new execs at the end of the year so that we can go through all these things and make sure that we're all readily available throughout the years, throughout next year for any questions and everything. And I really want to set up more concrete what the vice president's position is. I think a lot of people in Senate sometimes think like if Landon isn't doing it, then it's like all on me. And there's a lot of other people working under us. And so kind of trying to figure out how to make that role more transparent in the future would really help and really make the position itself more successful. I say to the new members of Senate or people that are stepping into a new role, the main thing is to just be respectful and understanding. Debates can get really heated, and I know you can sit there and roll your eyes at whatever somebody says, but it's really important to respect what they are saying. They are another student or they are a faculty member, administrator, and so you have to respect that first. And then also listen to each other and try to understand. I think I've gone into meetings where I think that I have the best idea and I want to push for that idea and kind of ignore what other people are saying. And so throughout my 3 years, I've learned that, you know what, you're not always going to have the best ideas, because while you might be a great student leader, you're on this organization with a billion other great student leaders. And I've said a billion so many times, I sound like Donald Trump. So you have to be able to understand each other. And I think another thing that Student Senate, or at least senators, could do better on is being honest and having more open conversations. I think we're not good at criticizing each other. A lot of times the executives will get back evals and we'll read something like, well, why didn't this person just ask me about that particular issue? Or why didn't this person like say this to my face or something? And it's really, like, it can be hurtful when you're reading all these things like, I can't think of one, but when you're reading these things, you're just like, well, why hasn't anybody just like come up and talked to me? So I think in the future, if you are having an issue with another senator or with an executive, just say, hey, I'd love to plan a meeting if we can sit down and just talk about things and just talk it out, because it'll solve problems. It'll give you a better understanding about what their mentality was or what their position actually is, instead of just like jumping at them. I think that we could definitely do better with that. And it helps with professional development too, because in the real world, if you're having an issue with a coworker, it's not like you can write an eval or something. You like actually have to sit down and talk with them, and it can be really uncomfortable. Confrontation is awkward for sure, but it's what makes you grow as a leader. It what makes you grow in a professional sense, and I think that we can do that a lot.